Welcome to What's Your Home Worth, a WUSA 9 report. I'm Larry Miller.
How is it that the wood and the walls and the nails, right, that were used, how are they worth less than what they cost us?
And every realtor said, we don't know that your house will sell for that price because it's not going to appraise for that in Prince George's County.
I'm an older person, so throughout history they always said, communities that are primarily black are lower value, and I don't believe that. It is something that is very concerning.
It seemed, based on what I read in the report, that you guys lay out the argument that this is a concerted, deliberate effort by some to disenfranchise marginalized communities. Would you agree with that statement?
There's no question about it. It is intentional.
And the more that we are able to really highlight this issue, to educate the public in general about what is happening, the more we will be able to be successful in fixing the problem.
Things will change.
We've got a lot of work to do.
We wish things had been different.
It started with a conversation and led us on a disturbing journey. Black homeowners said they noticed something suspicious about their home appraisals. And when we got to digging, we too confirmed something unusual is going on. For the last year, we've been examining allegations of home appraisal bias here in Prince George's County. Homeowner after homeowner told us they lost thousands of dollars because their house appraised lower than expected. After reviewing the data and talking with researchers, we found that many of those with lower than expected home appraisals were black homeowners that lived in majority black neighborhoods here in Prince George's County. Our investigation started with a small group of homeowners and would eventually get the attention of the White House.
I think Prince George's County has something very special. It's my son's bus. Hey, buddy. The greater Washington area can be so transient, and despite that, people, they come here, they can move from any part of the U.S. and decide to live here, and then they stay. And I think that's a rarity in this region. If you've not experienced Prince George's County, if you're not familiar with the area, if you don't spend time here, you're only taking the narratives that have been perpetuated.
Prince George's County, Maryland is a majority-minority community. There's nearly 1 million people who call it home. With more than 60% of the population identifying as black, census data shows it's the most affluent African-American majority county in the country. Jacqueline Priestley is protective of the county. She's built her life here. She's built a business here. She even met her husband here, at church, no less.
I was with my mom in church when Cassius and I met, and I was like, is he trying to, introduce himself on a personal level to me in church? And he was like, is it okay if I talk to you?
Jackie and Cassius would eventually build a life together in Prince George's County, including building a dream home filled with enough rooms for their 3 growing boys and extended family members. They purchased land in Bowie, paid for materials and other construction costs. It would total $1.8 million. But when the house had to be appraised to complete a home loan application, it would only appraise at $1.2 million. Something wasn't adding up.
How is it that the wood and the walls and the nails, right, that were used, how are they worth less than what they cost us? When in neighboring counties, we're seeing that the exact same builder building the exact same size and type of home is worth twice as much as what our home cost to build.
The Priestleys asked for the appraisal to be reconsidered. It would only inch up $100,000 more to $1.3 million. It still left them in the red, nearly $500,000. A similar scenario was playing out at their neighbor's house just a few doors down.
We came here, and as soon as we opened the door,
We knew.
we were like, this is it.
Absolutely.
This is exactly, I didn't have to go a step further. It was that immediate.
A dramatic, winding staircase like this would catch anyone's eye. And it did for the Taylors that were in the market for a new home back in 2015.
We purchased the home for $1.45 million.
The pair was looking to expand their growing healthcare business. To complete the transaction, their assets had to be appraised to finalize the deal. It meant an appraiser would assess the value of their home. But the call they got from the bank wasn't the one they were anticipating.
He said, Steve, I got some pretty bad news for you. that your home is not appraised for the value that you're estimating it as. Yeah. And I said, well, what is it? Just maybe a $50,000 to $100,000 less? He was like, no, more like $300,000 less than what you paid for it.
Right.
About $500,000 less than what you had estimated the value to be. That was a total shock.
Yeah, and it could have been a deal killer.
Luckily, they found another way to make the deal work, but the appraisal left them puzzled. How would a home they bought 4 years ago end up losing $500,000 in value during the height of the market frenzy in 2021? Kim remembered the call she got from a neighbor.
I got a call in February of last year as the HOA president from one of our neighbors. Well, he was building a house, his family, their forever home at the top of the cul-de-sac. And of course, during your building process, you have to get an appraisal. And the appraisal that they got was about, I think, $500,000 or $600,000 less than what they were paying to build the house. You know, who's walking around with $400,000 or $500,000, $600,000 in cash? A
street lined with large homes, and homeowner after homeowner saying that the appraisals kept coming up short and by large sums.
And so I called my friend Melanie Gamble. You know, she was on her way to becoming president of the Prince George's County Association of Realtors. And I said, what are your thoughts about this? She said, Kim, is going on all over the county.
Coming up.
If he's going through that decision making, there must be hundreds, dozens of others daily that are making the same decision. So what can we do about it?
From problem to action, how suspicious home appraisals sparked a plan for change.
There was a family who had planned to build a home in our community, and their appraisal was so low that they were questioning whether to do so. And then another neighbor said, well, I got a lowball appraisal. And we're like, how is everyone getting lowballed? Significantly and coming in at the same number roughly, when the houses aren't alike in size, in specs, in construction materials. They were just different. They just weren't meant to be compared.
When appraisers review a house, they typically use comparable houses within a particular neighborhood to justify the value that they've assigned. For instance, if I wanted to sell a 4-bedroom house in this neighborhood, the appraiser would typically use other 4-bedroom houses within a short distance to justify the value they've assigned to my house. Homeowners in this Bowie neighborhood tell me that just about every house kept appraising at roughly the same value, even though the majority of them are vastly different in terms of square footage, the number of rooms, and other amenities. When homeowners got wind of that, they realized they needed to act.
I called my friend Melanie Gamble. She was on her way to becoming president of the Prince George's County Association of Realtors. And I said, what are your thoughts about this? She said, Kim, is going on all over the county. I'm like, wow, okay. So what can we do about it, Melanie? So she called the National Fair Housing Alliance next. And we met with them several times. Then we started adding people, realtors. She reached out to an appraiser. I reached out to some of our other neighbors. Have you had this same experience? And then the ball started rolling. We started forming this group.
Thanks again for joining us this morning.
The group would call itself the Fair and Unbiased Appraisal Advocates, or FUA. They would even set up the website blackhomesmatter.org. It provided resources to other families on how to combat low appraisals or alleged bias.
And I'm going to just share with you a brief example of that.
The group would eventually get in contact with senior Brookings Institute fellow Dr. Andre Perry. His scholarly research focused on the valuation of assets in Black communities. He said what these homeowners experience is part of a larger systemic problem.
Our research shows that Black neighborhoods, particularly in the Prince George's County area, where they're losing about $48,000 of equity simply because of the color of their skin. It has widespread implications not only for municipalities, but for the state as a whole.
Home appraisals are important because the homes are tied to property taxes. Property taxes fund local schools, fire departments, law enforcement, and a variety of local projects. If home values in a particular neighborhood are depressed, that means less money, less resources going to schools and public safety departments that rely on adequate funding. It also presents additional issues for homeowners. Lower home values limit equity or the value of a homeowner's interest in their home. Home equity can be used to pay for college, home improvements, or even start a business.
That's the money people use to uplift themselves. When wealth is simply extracted simply because of the concentration or share of the black population in a particular neighborhood, you're really robbing people of a chance at the American dream.
Everybody deserves a fair.
That's something FUA wouldn't stand for. The Fair and Unbiased Appraisal Advocates went on to organize several community forums to get the word out.
When it's the same house that's built here.
The meetings were often charged.
How are we going to pass down inheritance to our children and children's children?
Angelique Best attended one of the meetings. She's been a mortgage broker for over 20 years.
I have been fighting appraisal values for years. After the market crash and Dodd-Frank came out, now when we order an appraisal, we have to order it through the lender's appraisal management company. And so we don't have any relationship with the appraiser. We don't even know who that appraiser is or even where they're coming from.
The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act passed in 2010, overhauling financial regulations and put in place safeguards to ensure what led to the 2008 housing crash didn't happen again.
There may be some racial issues to that. I'm not even going to deny that that's probably a very, very big piece of it. And so consequently, when you have an appraiser that comes in low, it's extremely difficult to argue.
Ayako Marsh has been an appraiser for the last 23 years.
I live in D.C., but I appraise in Maryland and D.C. and Virginia. But my property is the same property across the bridge, same design, same updates, and it's worth double. So the location does matter. And even though we want to try to say we want to get away from that, it does matter.
But researchers say appraisers share in the blame. An analysis from Redfin found appraisals can be problematic because they can perpetuate the cycle of racism by assigning lower values to homes in black neighborhoods than white neighborhoods. Coming up,
things will change.
Lawmakers and the Biden administration get involved in the fight for fair home appraisals. More on that when WUSA 9 Reports returns.
I'd be pounding the table. I'd be grabbing my realtor by the necktie and say, what is this? How could a home that I built or maintained be appraised at less than what I put into building it?
It took brave families and our reporting to get the attention of lawmakers, and once that happened, things really kicked into high gear. First, Maryland gubernatorial candidate and the state's current comptroller, Peter Francho, requested Attorney General Brian Frosh launch an investigation into allegations of biased home appraisals. A spokesperson would not comment on the request when we asked about its status. Then state delegate and FUA member Marvin Holmes went on to propose House Bill 1097, which would form a task force to study the effectiveness of policies and laws that regulate home appraisals.
It's a testament to the importance of advocacy and bringing awareness to disparities and to biases that stifle prosperity. And so it's not only important that we're here, and it means a lot to us to be here, but also to know that USA 9 and your work specifically, Larry, helped to bring a lot of attention and exposure to this issue.
His bill worked its way through the House.
Persons are a little bit leery in making a complaint because they fear there may be ramifications in getting the loan.
It passed the House and then began its journey through the state Senate.
Okay, I'm here with Delegate Holmes, and we just left the Judicial Proceedings Committee where there was a hearing with regard to HB 1097.
It passed the Senate. And although Governor Larry Hogan did not sign the bill because it wasn't vetoed by the governor, Maryland law states that the bill becomes law. On Capitol Hill, the Biden administration was conducting its own 6-month-long investigation. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Marcia Fudge and White House Domestic Policy Advisor Susan Rice coordinated the PAVE Task Force, an interagency coalition that examined appraisal bias throughout the country. In its 58-page report, the task force added to research from institutions like the Brookings Institute, Redfin, and Freddie Mac, showing homes in majority black and brown neighborhoods were being devalued and by thousands of dollars.
The more that we are able to really highlight this issue, to educate the public in general about what is happening, the more we will be able to be successful in fixing the problem.
The report also detailed changes aimed at addressing appraisal bias, like requiring appraisers to complete anti-bias training, diversifying the appraisal workforce that reports show is 97% white, and addressing potential bias and emerging technology-based valuation tools.
We proudly live in Prince George's County, Maryland.
At PAVE's news conference, the nation heard from Jacqueline Priestley and 2 other families affected by low home appraisals. Mike Johnson from Ohio whitewashed his home after a low appraisal, removing any signs his biracial children or himself lived in the house he shared with his white wife. He saw the value of his home jump a staggering $225,000 after erasing any connection to his house.
We do everything by the book. We're good parents. We take care of our kids. And so to potentially be told that, you know, we don't qualify based off of the way our family looks was disheartening.
Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge.
There's no question about it. It is intentional. Now, I'm not suggesting that every appraiser is racist, but when you have decades of a community being undervalued, when the person comes in today, they're going to undervalue it too, because that has been its history.
How do you get people to support you? I mean, there's an industry that's been working to devalue the assets of minority homeowners for decades.
We have included banks and lending institutions in this process and basically said to them, if we cannot get the appraisers that you use, trained in diversity, trained in how to appraise housing in these particular neighborhoods, we expect for you not to use them. Secondly, what we have said is that every appraiser is to get a certain kind of training before they go out and appraise anywhere. And thirdly, the appraisal industry, because of our report, has admitted they have a problem.
What does that measure of success look like for you when there are no issues of appraisal bias?
Once we can get the industry to admit that they have a problem, to get them to start to bring in more diverse people to be appraisers, for us to really see them look at this from a lens that is a lens of equity. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but little by little, house by house, we're going to change it.
Still to come, does your neighborhood feel at all a bit different now? Do you feel like the type of life that you're trying to give your boys is now going to be more equitable because of the work that you've been doing for the past 7 months?
You know, they've been on this journey with us.
Where the fight for justice in the home appraisal industry takes this group of activists to. Next.
When you love where you live, it is nice to know that you've poured back into your community and to help others in this way. And this is just one small part.
Whether or not the early action announced by the Biden administration is enough remains to be seen. But the journey for fair, unbiased home appraisals has shown that these incidents are happening all over the country, from Marion County, California in the west to Prince George's County, Maryland here in the east.
Well, my hope is there are measures put in place that is able to sustain this work beyond the current administration.
And then in terms of...
As the fair and unbiased appraisal advocates, we're really proud of the attention that we've brought to misvalued appraisals here in Prince George's County. But from our perspective, we're just getting started. There's a lot of work ahead. For our children, you know, they've been on this journey with us. They ask questions, and Mommy, what's that meeting you're going to? Or how did you get invited to the White House?
And 3.
As a parent, it was an eye-opening experience to bring our children on this journey, to learn, to understand. It's painful, honestly, to have to explain what racial bias is, but more than anything, I'm encouraged because our children are able to see progress.
So what's next for the fair and unbiased appraisal advocates? They say more work and a lot more forums. They have no intentions of slowing down until alleged appraisal bias is a thing of the past. And there's a lesson in all of this. When we speak up, find allies, and commit to a plan, anything is possible. I'm Larry Miller. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you later.